Thank you, Acting Madam Deputy Chair. And I rise tonight to announce the policies of the People First Party in regards to taxation. I will note that the People First Party is the only party to have such a comprehensive taxation policy, and I'm more than welcome to share it with the two major parties if you would like to take any of my ideas, which I suggest you do, because one great thing about being an independent, I can sit back here and watch you guys play the Punch and Judy show, but we really need to be providing a vision and hope for the people of Australia, and we just aren't getting that at the moment. And the first policy that I want to introduce is effectively lifting the tax-free threshold to $40,000. I think it is completely wrong that people that earn at least the cost of living, and to be honest, $40,000 is probably not quite at the cost of living, but I can't afford any more at $40,000 at the moment. But we should not be taxing people if they earn less than the cost of living. It is completely wrong, and we want to reward these people. I believe in reward for effort. The words of our national anthem are wealth for toil. It is not wealth for foreign debt or watching your asset prices increase because we've got a rapid population increase. Now, the second thing I want to do is I want to change the way superannuation is taxed in this country. For some bizarre reason, superannuation is taxed on your balance and not on income. Now, that is completely perverse because all other legal structures, trusts, companies and your own individual selves are taxed on how much income you earn. And I'll give you an example of how you could have a distortion in the market. If you've got $2.8 million in super and you earn 5%, under the proposed superannuation scheme, you'll only pay 15 cents in the dollar by earning $140,000. But if you only earn 3% over $3 million, you earn, say, $90,000, you would pay 30 cents. So we don't want to see those sort of perverse outcomes. But the beauty of just having a flat, so what the proposal will be is that your first $25,000 in super will be tax-free. And there will be no limits on how much money you can put in or take out or how old you are and all of these other things. It's basically if you decide you want to put money into your superannuation account and split your income, that is up to you. However, we're not going to make it super generous like we have now, where we have multimillionaires who put a heap of money in under the Costello rules of the early 2000s there, and Dick Smith's one of them, and he openly admits he should be paying more tax in super. We have to have an equitable super system. But the beauty of this system is if you're a young person, you can put all your savings into super and you can effectively split your income so you can earn another $25,000 tax-free to help you save quicker for your house. Now, the next thing I want to do, and not many people will understand this, but it is very important that we lift the rate of withholding tax on profits sent offshore. I'll give you one example. Ireland has a 10% withholding tax, or we have a 10% withholding tax on royalties sent to Ireland. Ireland has a company tax rate of 12.5 cents. So 12.5 cents plus 10 cents is 22.5 cents. It is in the interests of many multinational companies to transfer as much of their profits to Ireland because they'll get a 30-cent tax deduction for it here and they'll only pay 22.5 cents to send it to Ireland. So in the case of Pfizer, for example, and as I was saying it to a couple of politicians this morning, they sent over $1 billion of their profit in 2023 over to Ireland. I'm not sure why Pfizer's even got factories in Ireland, but 7.5 cents of $1 billion is $75 million for the sake of a couple of accounting journals, and it really is that simple. You just do a couple of accounting journals, you justify the arm's length, which for some reason the tax office seems to think that it's okay that Pfizer have an operating profit ratio of 7% when they're here in Australia, when their worldwide operating profit's 40%. And that will be the next step that I will do to tighten offshore profit leakage, is to make sure that we have an operating profit test, operating profit ratio test. So as I just said, Pfizer and Facebook, or Meta, they have worldwide operating profits of about 40%, but their operating profit ratio here in Australia is only 7%. Why is it that the tax office is allowing these multinationals to send so much money overseas when it is clearly looks to be in breach of the arm's length transaction rules? And I'll just quote one other country, Germany, for example, the UK. There's a 5% withholding tax on sending royalties to those countries. Germany has a company tax rate of 15 cents, so 15 plus 5 is 20 cents. You can see that there's a 10-cent arbitrage there if you want to actually transfer profits offshore. We need to stop the leakage, okay? Because it's much better to retain earnings here in this country from earnings derived in this country than to let earnings go offshore and then have to borrow money from offshore back into Australia. Now, the other thing we need to do is fix up our franking credits in this country. Franking credits is a dog's breakfast. There's only a handful of countries in the world that actually refund franking credits, and the whole imputation scheme is very complicated and very inefficient. And what we have, when Paul Keating originally introduced the imputation credit scheme, that was probably fair enough. We didn't want double taxation. But then Peter Costello came along in 2000 and started refunding franking credits. Now, in the year 2000, there was about $500 billion in superannuation. I think there was a little bit less than that, actually. Today, there's $3.5 trillion in superannuation. And superannuation is forecast to grow to $10 trillion by 2050. Not quite sure what you're going to invest in, and that's forecast to be about 200% of GDP. But the problem with that is that you're effectively going to end up with superannuation funds owning most of the ASX. So companies will pay 30 cents tax to Canberra. The superannuation fund will then do their tax return, and the Canberra will then repay 15 cents back to the superannuation fund. So effectively, our real company tax now, because you refund so much in franking credits, is actually below 15 cents. Now, we are effectively eroding our company tax base, and we have many people talk about, the big oil companies aren't paying enough tax, etc., etc. Well, we need to stop the erosion of our company tax base. So what I'm proposing is a 25% company tax, but a 15% rebate. So effectively, for small investors, a $10,000 refund, but above $10,000 in franking credits, all you're going to get is a 15% non-refundable rebate, so that your effective rate of tax is 10 cents. Or otherwise, we don't have that, we are going to erode our company tax base down to zero. It's a little bit complicated, but it's got to be done. The other thing we need to do is abolish the 50% CGT discount. As I discussed earlier today and I posted yesterday, that concession costs the Tax Act $20 billion. And what we've got when that was introduced in the late 90s is that asset prices have rapidly increased. So we need to look at using that money by abolishing that. Bring back cost indexation. I need to stress that you can still index your cost base by the rate of inflation, and that was what we used to do when I first became an accountant back in 1991. That was my first job ever, was to go through and index the cost base. But that is, and in inflation, in a period of inflation, that will actually benefit you if you hold your asset for more than 6 or 7 years anyway, because your cost base will grow by 50%. But that policy will encourage long-term people to take a long-term view on their investing. So we need to look at that. And what I would then use with that $20 billion is to then cut the income tax rate from 30 cents to 20 cents between $45,000 and $65,000, because I believe in reward for effort, I believe in wealth for toil. And I think our income tax rates in this country are way too high. So, yet again, we need to flatten our tax structure, lower the rate of tax on those people that get out of bed and put their nose to the grindstone, and reward effort. There's a number of loopholes in the Tax Act that I want to get rid of as well, and I'll discuss them very briefly. Section 128F of the 36 Income Tax Act gives a tax-free, allows interest paid offshore to foreign banks to be tax-free. People in Australia have to pay tax on their savings. I don't see why foreign banks don't have to pay tax on the interest income they earn. I also want to get rid of the CGT exemption for foreigners who own less than 10% of a non-real asset, or have less than 10% of a non-real asset. They should also pay CGT, and that includes water rights. Can you believe it? Foreigners can buy water rights and not have to pay CGT on that. That is not a good thing, so we need to remove that as well. There's another thing in the Tax Act where big Australian multinationals can go offshore, buy companies offshore, and because they buy a permanent establishment offshore, the income earned offshore is not accessible here, but they can use the interest that they borrowed here in Australia as an expense against Australian income. And that lacks symmetry, and Australian taxpayers shouldn't have to be subsidising Australian multinationals to expand offshore. So I look forward to pushing these policies over the next 6 to 8 months. Thank you.
Authorised G. Rennick People First Chermside.